to our July regular Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Paulette O'Brien.
Here.
Judy Couchet.
Here.
John Freed.
Here.
Scott Latham.
Here.
Ryan Tobin. In the event of an emergency, visitors are advised that they may exit this room from the one side door which is directly in the front. In the event of an emergency, everyone is asked to move away from the building and do not attempt to leave in your automobiles, since this may cause traffic problems and block incoming emergency vehicles.
Thank you. Our first item is our first hearing of visitors. We'll entertain comments and questions about agenda items only. Does anybody care to address the board at this time? Angela? Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda, which is our approval of our minutes from our July 8th reorg meeting, our financial matters, which is the treasurer's report, the monthly budget status report. The bills will be at our August meeting. Transfers, extra classroom activity fund, contracted services, New York Therapy Placement Services, Mountain Lake Academy, Christopher Manfredi, CPR, AED, and First Aid, and Serene Nursing Agency. We're also surplusing leg extension machine, an abdominal machine, a squat machine. And then as a follow-up from last month's meeting, these are the additional junior, senior high activity bank funds that extracurricular funds, virtual enterprise, radio broadcast media, GSA, SAFER, First Robotics, Cheerleading, and Ambassador Club.
I have a question. On contracted services, are we just approving them, or are we signing contracts? And are they things that if we don't have in-person education, we're still going to be holding to the contracts? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
So,
I don't,
yep.
In other words, the out-of-district placement one?
You're talking about
New York Therapy Placement Services, I don't even know what that is.
New York Therapy would provide us services in certain areas if we didn't have district employees to do them. We contract with them for certain rates, but we only pay for services rendered.
Okay, and then Mountain Lake Academy is a...
That's, I believe, a residential.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that I get that. CPR, First Aid, if, and Serene Nursing Agency, if we're not using them because we end up not in school, we're not going to be paying for any. Okay,
Correct,
I just want to make sure.
And I think the same would hold true for the residential placement, too. If the student doesn't go there, right?
If the student doesn't go
Right,
there.
if the
but I
student
mean-
doesn't go there.
Student doesn't go.
If it's,
And typically, the residential placements will be guided by the jurisdiction of where they are. So,
Okay.
for instance,
if they're out of state.
there
then-
could be somebody upstate where they're in a different level than we are, and they might be open where we may not be.
Right, okay. All right, just double checking, thanks.
Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Old business. It's been a few weeks, I guess we don't have any old business. All right, here comes the big superintendent's report. It's all you, Dr. Morrow.
Okay, so we've been working for the last couple of weeks. We've received guidance from New York State on how to reopen schools, and we're putting together a plan that will be posted on Friday. We're also going to post this PowerPoint along with it, but we put this together to really explain the guidelines that we're going to be utilizing as we look at reopening schools. So our process started months ago, prior to my even getting here, when a task force got together to look at these different things. And it was made up of law enforcement personnel, teachers, psychologists, social workers, community members, parents, administrators. We've also surveyed students about distance learning in our schools. We've surveyed parents about their intentions and how comfortable they are about sending their children back to school. And then we've utilized guidance documents from the CDC, the Department of Health, and also the New York State Department of Education. So We're not going to go through all of this, but these are the guiding principles from the Board of Regents as to how they came up with their 156-page guidance document. It is extremely thorough. If anything, it's a little bit too thorough and difficult to work with at times. But in essence, they put together a document that covered every area and, guided us on how we can have our children educated this year in a safe manner. The guidance document will be attached to this email. You'll see it on a later slide. These are the guidelines that the governor has put in place. We can reopen if that region is phase 4 of the reopening. Daily infection rate remains below 5% or lower, using a 14-day average since the unpause was lifted. Schools in New York State will close if the regional infection rate rises above 9%, using a 7-day average after August 1st. And then Governor Cuomo, between the 1st and the 7th, will make a more definitive statement on what schools will be permitted to do, and that will really guide us. Based on the fact that they've required us to have 3 scenarios in our plan, I'm expecting that his statement will include one of those unless we have a huge change in what goes on. These are the 2 guidance documents, links to them. Good reading if you want to get a good night's sleep. So feel free to click on those links once I post this up in a couple days and read through them. Truthfully, the Department of Health and the New York State guidelines, they're very, very similar. They mirror each other. It's evident that one came from the other. The primary difference is there are some SEL pieces, there are some free reduced lunch pieces and things like that that you wouldn't see in the Department of Health guidelines that are in the New York State preliminary guidance document. They say preliminary because they have followed up and clarified some of the things in it a few different times. They have also rescinded and contradicted some of their clarifications as we've gone. So it's been a little bit of planning and unplanning and changing planning, and it's an extremely fluid process, and I believe that it will continue to be because we're kind of in uncharted waters. So I don't believe that will change.
I was just going to, you're going to post this once you hear from the governor?
No, we're required to have our plan posted by the 31st.
Oh, so
I'm going to post the PowerPoint with it because I think the PowerPoint is usable.
absolutely.
It's a 16-slide PowerPoint. To anybody that wants to look, you can have a really good idea on what we're doing around all these different areas, whereas the paperwork is going to be another thing that you can read if you want to get a good night's sleep.
But you post it Friday, so.
They'll
it'll
both be posted by Friday, yes. Yep, they'll both be posted by Friday. So this was instructional option number 1, which you have to plan for. This is everybody's in. Smaller classes can meet daily with practicing social distance and all of the guidelines that you have in the state, through the state. Lunch will take place in classrooms or designated areas. So, a high school lunch might be in the cafeteria, in the auditorium, and in a classroom with supervision in all 3 places because you can't fit the normal 60 students or 70 students that you would have in a lunch period in the cafeteria while you're socially distancing to the guidelines. We would cohort students as much as possible. Our cohorts, a lot of cohorts are between 15 and 30 kids in other districts. Our cohorts, would be smaller than that or grade levels. Again, much easier to do this on the lower levels than it is on the upper. So, prepare staff and students and families to transition to full remote instruction in the event that, there is a school closure. We didn't have the ability to do this in March in any school district in New York State. We were here one day, we were gone the next. So one of our obligations and one of the things that, we're prodded to do in the guidance documents is have a plan in place and prepare and train in case that plan comes to fruition. This is a plan that will be very difficult for us. It was our primary plan, and it still is our primary plan, but under the current guidelines, we're going to have a hard time managing the number of students that we have and the spaces that we have in accordance with the guidelines for distancing and all of the things that we'll have to put in place. So that is the first one. The second one is this would be our primary plan at this time. It's a blended in-person and distance remote instruction plan. So our elementary students, K to 6, will be in every day. Our self-contained students would also be in every day. Our secondary students would be in 50% of the day. Those in school will follow routines and follow up on instruction that they got the day before and do pre-teaching activities that are given to them the day before so that when they come back every other day, they can end up covering the amount of material that they would typically have covered in 2 days. They'll have smaller groups to do that with. You know, a class of 22 will have 11 students. They should hopefully be able to get through more material in the day, and then students would follow up with independent work germane to that material, and then come back the following day with their questions and to review that material and move on to the next lesson. You know, so the remote instruction will obviously come in many different ways, you know, come in lessons that are sent home, lessons that are posted on our Google Classroom postings, it could be things that teachers tape to put on there, and it'll come in all those different modalities. So that would be our second model and the one that we're really looking at right now. And there we go. Option number 3, if schools are closed, we'll be doing remote learning for everybody. Again, if the 7-day average in the region, if the infection rate for the 7-day average rises to above 9%, schools will be closed. That takes place after the governor speaks on August 1st. Students will be scheduled for live instruction sessions daily. You know, it's important and something we didn't have in place last year and we're not able to consistently do, but it's something that's important. Our kids, now what those sessions look like, it's not going to look like your typical class every day. It's not going to be, you know, 3 straight hours on with a teacher, but it's going to be live instruction daily, and we're going to be able to teach our kids. We are required through the state's direction to take attendance daily. We are required to, you know, process grades and grade kids for their work, and get through the material that we're obligated to get through. So there will be minimal independent work. There will be independent work, but there is now. Even when they're in every day, they go home and do homework, which is independent work. So, you know, they'll be scheduled for live instruction sessions. Instruction may be a combination of small and large group. There will be a minimal independent work. Attendance will be monitored. Participation and completion of work will be assessed. Schools will provide regular feedback to students and parents. All of this is, it's good instructional practice, but it's also required in the guidance documents from New York State. You know, so they're things that we would be looking to do either way. So those are the 3 models of instruction. You know, protected groups, there'll be, you know, there will be different supports in place for protected groups. As we go through, we will obviously provide all of our service to anybody that has an IEP or 504. SEL students, supports will be put in place throughout the year for our kids. We will start with them in the first week, in those days where we have kids in the elementary on alternating days, the half and half. We'll be able to start with some of our SEL and hygiene and you know, training for social distancing and things that are difficult sometimes to do with 22 third graders. We're going to be doing with 11. Utilize parent and student surveys to assess appropriate SEL supports for students. You know, we haven't had our students since, by the time they come back for school, 6 months. So we're going to have to reach out in the next month to families and ask for information about not only their learning, but their emotional status, what supports we may need to put in place for kids, because some of our kids might look exactly like they did when they left and act exactly like they did, and some may not. So we're going to have to really assess those things prior to coming in. We're going to have to continue assessing them when they're in. So, you know, we have special attention on those. Our screening is going to be a combination of parents and us. We're going to send parents screening information that they're going to have to contact us and keep their children home if they answer yes to some of these different questions, like, have you come into contact with anybody who has tested positive for the coronavirus? Well, if your answer to that is yes, you need to call the school and not send your child in. Have you gone to any of the, you know, the hotbed states in the last, you know, 48 hours? If your answer to that is yes, then, you know, you're going to have to keep your child home and call the nurse. Does your child have a fever over 100? If the answer is yes, you call the nurse, and then we will provide you with direction on what you would need to do to have your child return to school. So some of our screening is going to be done in homes, and we're going to email home all this information and send it to them. On the parent survey, they did indicate that they prefer email as their mode of communication. But we will have other modes available, and we'll have this stuff posted. And then we will have screening for faculty, students on property. As they come in, we'll be doing temperature checks in different ways. And then, the health questionnaire is what we'll be sending home to parents, and also asking some of our older kids.
So are they going to be doing temperature checks before they get them on the bus?
We're looking at trying to work out a system and a mechanism to do that now.
Have at least 5 thermometers for each bus then, because I can tell you, I use those, and you have to wait for them to reset.
Do you?
Between children.
Okay, so,
There's a period you can't do. I use 2 every day,
yeah.
because if I have a couple kids walking.
These are not ours. I just took this picture off the
Right,
internet.
but that's pretty much what everybody's using.
Yeah.
And it's what OCFS and all them are
Okay,
handing out,
yeah.
or they can,
So
but they
yeah.
need time to reset, I believe.
Well, we've ordered about a dozen, which would be 2 or 3 for each bus.
Right.
But we may have to order more. And, I believe when we get to the end and we talk about some of the possible changes to our calendar at the beginning of the year, some of that has been put in place and is being proposed, because we really don't know what we don't know. We can plan till the end of time. We've never done this. No one has
Right.
ever done this.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You just brought up if people coming from other states, so
Mhm.
let's pretend school's going to start on the day it's supposed to start.
Yep.
Is it the school's responsibility to notify all staff and all family members 2 weeks beforehand? If you're coming from any of those, whatever the states are going to be at that time, you need to quarantine for 2 weeks before school begins.
It's our obligation to send out the health questionnaire, and in it, it says, have you been in any of these states in the last 14 days? If so, do not come to school and notify the school immediately. As much as, we have some investigative power, we have very little. So almost all of these things rely on us all working together as educators and parents.
I think to Paulette's point is that perhaps, we should be sending something out August 15th to say, if you're planning, you need to make sure
Yeah.
that that
Right.
plan gets you back with 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks to quarantine.
So the
2 weeks
things,
of quarantine, that, you need to build that into
I
your
understand.
schedule in order
So
for
we
us
can,
to start.
we can look at the things that, we're partnering with parents in the screening process, so maybe the part that we are going to be partnering with parents on, we can send them mid-month, so that they know what that is and they can
Right, parents
digest it.
and staff.
Yeah, faculty, staff, parents, everybody. Our procedures, our rules in the state are the same for me as they are for a student, as they are
Right,
for
right.
everybody.
Right.
Like, I don't get to decide that I want to tough through my 102 fever and come in. In the past, we did those things, and, I went 23 years with about 4 sick days. You can't do that now. And, we're hoping that people will understand that things are different, and you have to act differently. So our screening processes, we're still looking at screening mechanisms for people to walk up in front of. We found some. Chief Cameron gave us some examples that they're using, and we've gotten information from the companies, and we may look at using some of those. I don't think we're going to look to purchase the walk-through screeners. They're a little expensive. But we'll look at it and see if we need 4 of these or 5 of these and they're breaking, and we'll look and see what we have and what we're going at. Social distancing, our guidelines will be strictly enforced. They're really already built into our code of conduct. The code of conduct, it basically says we have a set of rules, and when you're here, you have to follow them. Some of our rules are outlined in our board policies. Some of our rules are outlined in our classroom practices. Some of our rules are outlined in our return to school plan. It's an obligation of anybody on our property to follow these, whether it's a faculty member, staff member, guest, student. So they'll enter and exit buildings utilizing social distancing guidelines through different doors. We'll have marks on the floor. We'll hold fewer students, 6 foot apart in our classrooms. Everybody gets 36 square feet, and that's how we measure out our classrooms for our students now. We'll move unnecessary items out to give us more space in. Our classrooms won't look as fun and as inviting and as exciting as they did, or as we might like them to look. But that's the only way we can make more space. We'll cohort group our kids as much as possible. The flow in the building will be regulated. We're going to purchase washable masks for every student and teacher. Mask breaks will be provided. I had this conversation with a parent on the Zoom tonight, and they said, my third grader can go 25 minutes with a mask. To me, I think that we're going to have to talk about, 3 or 4 mask breaks per hour for students.
I guess my question is, if they're already sitting 6 feet apart,
The
they're
state,
working, do they need to have a mask on?
the state now says yes. The original guidance said no. The new guidance that was all red penned said yes. That came out Wednesday. The guidance came out Friday before, said no, either or. The new guidance said both. So, what we're going to have to do is, we're going to have to teach and train ourselves and students that, you take a mask break when you're sitting in your seat. I'll give you a perfect example. I was upstate with my family this weekend, and we went out and ate, and we came in with our masks, and we sat down, and the hostess said, you can take your mask off now, but if your fanny comes off that chair, it has to go back on. She said, even if you stand up to raise your hand, mask has to be on if you're standing. If you're sitting at your table,
That's my
you
point.
can take
If
it
they're
off.
sitting, if a kid is sitting
Yeah.
and another one's sitting over there, do
Yeah.
they have to be wearing a mask?
They've told us, the state has told us we do. Again, when we take mask breaks, mask breaks are not 5 seconds. You take your mask off and you have a little break without it on. That's done when you're sitting distanced at your seats. And we'll continue to work with our kids on that. And I do believe that the guidance and the direction will evolve as more information comes out. There are states that are doing 3 feet. The World Health Organization says 3 feet.
Right.
The pediatrics, the Pediatric Association says 3 feet, I believe.
Wear 6 feet and a mask.
We're 6 and a mask as of right now. So, limited use of shared objects. All classrooms will be equipped with hand sanitizers. We'll have them in every room. We also have to teach young kids how to use them. They're alcohol-based hand sanitizers. We can't just stick them in a room and hope they don't splash them on themselves. So these things will be done at the beginning of the year. I'll explain to you more how later. We're going to look at possible outdoor learning environments, courtyards, putting tables outside, possibly putting tents outside. We're getting quotes on some of them now. We'll eat lunch in multiple locations so that we're not cramming a lot of people into the cafeteria. Health and hygiene, we're going to start off the year teaching kids that you sanitize your hands when you come in, and teachers and faculty and staff and everybody and visitors. You sanitize your hands when you come in. We will have ample supplies of sanitizers. They'll be in every classroom, bathrooms and hand sanitizing stations. We'll have at least 1 per room. Students and staff will be trained in proper hand washing techniques and frequency. We're looking at a modified start of the year for elementary. Even though we're going to have all elementary students in, the first 4 days, we're looking at bringing in half each day so that we can teach them how to socially distance. You can tell a 17-year-old, stay 6 feet away from everybody and keep your mask on. You have to teach a 5-year-old how to stay 6 feet away and keep your mask on. And these are things that, a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old, they spend their time sitting on their parents' lap. We have to train them out of that and teach them out of that. And so when we get to the end, I'll explain the model that we're looking at doing at the beginning of the year so that we can try to teach kids how to do this correctly. I think they're perfectly capable, and I think they're perfectly willing. They just need to be taught. The natural instinct is for them to walk up and hug their kindergarten teacher. And we have to teach them that for right now, some of these things can't be done. Cleaning and disinfecting. When the plan comes out, there'll be a whole section broken down by how we clean all the different areas. But, Anthony has made a lot of progress in this area. As you go through, you'll see standard cleaning products, procedures based on current recommendations and best practices. We're going to have logs and schedules for everything that's been done in each room every day. We're going to have to educate everybody about the difference between disinfecting and cleaning. We have machines that we will be walking down the hallway with, and we will be, spraying the walls with the electrostatic disinfectants at the end of the day, and those walls will be totally disinfected tomorrow, but they won't look any cleaner because there's a difference between disinfecting and cleaning. And we're going to clean on a regular basis, but our focus is truly disinfecting now. So we're going to use we're buying one electrostatic spraying machine for each building so that we can do large doses on the walls and doors and everything at the end of the night and let them dry overnight. But then we also have handheld and pump dispensers for almost every custodian that we have at night. We're looking at realigning how we use our custodians, because some of our field maintenance and some of our field cleanups and things like that, we don't need them at the beginning of the year because we don't have sports. So we're going to hopefully utilize them a little bit differently to try to provide more cleaning. We have some of the UVC lights, the ones they use in the operating rooms, so we can put them in our nurses' rooms for 40 minutes at night, and any bacteria in there will automatically be terminated. We also have some handheld ones that we can use throughout the day to do keyboards, to do calculators, to do, you wave them. I think it takes about 5 minutes per pass and 2 passes, to kill the bacteria. And then we're also going to utilize something called ProShield in our buildings. It is a surface disinfectant that lasts for 90 days, and after you put it on, any type of bacteria on it is supposed to automatically be terminated and die. It's supposed to be reapplied every 90 days, so we would look at doing it right before we start school, the December break, the spring break, and then again at the end of the school year. So we have a lot of things that we've put in place. Most importantly of all of these things is we're going to utilize a cleaning schedule and a cleaning log to make sure that every area that needs to be disinfected and cleaned every night is done. Transportation, when we look at our survey, our parent survey, I'm kind of marrying the two areas together. I'll send you the survey this week in the pack, but I'm not going to really go through it tonight because the parts that we took out of it I've mentioned throughout the presentation. We're going to run at 50% with our buses. That means about 26 students per bus. 25 if we have someone on there checking temperatures, 24 if we need to keep somebody from out of the bus seat. When we look at the split schedule on the high school, it should afford us the opportunity to bring in about 180 kids a day on a bus. That is just barely below how many 50% would be. When we look at our surveys, parents tell us that only about 50% of the kids are going to ride the buses. So we should not incur any additional bus costs besides paying the person to go and take temperatures if we're able to put that in place even. We should not really incur any other bus costs.
That's the same for elementary and high
Yes,
school?
elementary, we have 298 elementary students. We can hold 208, I believe, on eight buses, 26 each bus. So say about 196 if we take off of the matron and the other student and the seat behind the driver. We come out to 196. About 50% of our families have said that their kids are going to come in on buses and the rest will be dropped off. In a typical year, they tell me that we have between 60 and 80 dropped off at the elementary school every day. That puts us almost able to take every other student on a bus. So we're going to be very close. We do not expect to incur costs. What we're going to be doing over the next month is we're going to be reaching out to every family and asking them if they're going to be taking their buses, because we have to reroute our buses based on the number of students that we have. So as much as this plan is relatively thorough, and the one that we put on paper will look even more thorough, there's a tremendous amount of work that we have to do over the next 4 weeks. We're going to have to reach out to every family in Southold and say, not, are you planning on taking the bus, which is what I asked so we could come up with these plans. We need to ask them, are you taking the bus? We need a definitive yes or no, because we're only going to have 24 kids on a bus, so we're only going to stop for 24 kids. And that, that takes a great deal of work and time, and that's what we're starting right now. They'll be cleaned and disinfected throughout the day if possible, definitely at the end of every day. The guidelines say you have to do them at the end of every day, at the end of your last run. We may possibly spray them midday if we have concerns. We will wipe down areas if we have concerns during the day. One of the things we're going to have to get out to our community is that if we are screening students, parents need to be available, because we can't leave a student at the bus stop. We could possibly cordon them on the bus, off on an area of the bus and bring them in, but really the only good option is that we have to relay information to our parents that there's got to be somebody available to pick their child up at the bus stop if they screen in a positive way for their temperature. So we're going to have to work through some of those things. We're going to have emergency contact numbers on buses and access to cell phones for people to call. School activities, these are all pretty much defined based on the state guidelines, but field trips at this time, we've canceled them, but we're not canceling them for the year like some places are. I'm not comfortable doing that, and I would like our kids to go on field trips if we get to the point where that's safe in the district. Co-curricular activities, we're looking at each of them individually. Any of the ones that we can run spaced, we're going to try to possibly run, because we would like to give our kids any opportunity we can to be involved in things outside of the classrooms. We are going to have to figure out a day, and it may be a day when kids aren't here, but we have a lot of logistics to figure out. Athletics, they've been pushed back to September 21st. The state is now talking about 3 5-week seasons that will be crunched together starting in January. I think they're committed to doing anything they possibly can. I don't know if we'll see sports this year, but the truth is none of that, all of that's out of our control. Section 11 in the New York State Public High School Athletic Association is going to make those decisions. Large group events are not permitted right now. We can't really even have them. Community use of facilities, we're not allowing community use of facilities right now because we wouldn't have the ability to disinfect and clean, nor would we have the ability to control what goes on and make sure it adheres to the state guidelines, because if it happens in our school, we're obligated to make sure that it adheres to all the guidelines in the state. No, they called yesterday to tell us they were polling here, but I wasn't in when they called, so I have to call them back and find out how they plan on doing that and what they're going to put in place to do it. But we did get a message notifying us that they'd be polling here yesterday. So I didn't get a chance to call them back today, but I want to find out, I need to get my own information on it because I don't know where we even poll. I would think the gym probably down here, but, it's got its own entrance and everything. But I want to call them and find out how they're going to manage that, because if I have to make sure they manage it based on these guidelines, then they're going to have to ensure me that they're managing it based on these guidelines. School visitors, we're going to limit them as much as possible. Inevitably, if we have a student who's ill, we're looking at different ways. We can't not have a parent come up and get a child who's sick, but we also could meet them at the door with the nurse or somebody. And so we're talking about different mechanisms to minimize any risk to anybody else. But when it comes to just having visitors, we're limiting them as much as possible. And then if they do, if they're coming, if we have somebody who's going to be contracting and doing work in our building during a day, they got to get screened. They're going to have a temperature check. They're going to have to go through the same screening that everybody else will have to go through. Calendar changes, which I mentioned a couple different times. So September 2nd and 3rd are right now our scheduled conference days. We are looking at taking the March conference day and moving it up to the 18th. And I'll explain to you why as I go through the rest of it. So the week of September 8th, 8, 9, 10, and 11, which is the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after the holiday, we're looking at doing half and half in all of our buildings, even though our elementary model is complete in. If we were to do half a class in our elementary school each day, that would give us the opportunity to do all of the necessary training with our young children and our management of all of the hygiene and social distancing and all the different things that they have to do with 8 to 12 kids rather than 22 kids or 16 kids, or so it will give us the ability to teach our students how to wash their hands correctly, how to use the hand sanitizers without getting alcohol-based hand sanitizer in their eyes, how to travel in the hallways, how to enter the building. All these different things that are really going to be a little bit different. I thought about our youngest kids and how we're going to need to support them, but I also think about like our 5th graders and 6th graders that have been doing this for 4 years. We're going to have to reteach them. They're used to coming in a certain way. They're used to using certain doors, and we're going to have to reteach them to manage the building in a way that adheres to all of the regulations. And as much as adults were having a hard time with it, it's going to be difficult. So for those 4 days, we would do the hybrid model K to 12. Once we hit the following Monday, the 14th, then our elementary kids would all be in for every day for the rest of the year. We'd stay hybrid on the secondary level. Like I said before, we are still working on middle school, high school, but as of now, it would be a hybrid model because that's the only one we can manage under the guidelines. All of our self-contained special education classes would be full in-person starting September 8th because they are small enough to be taught the hygiene and the distancing, and those classes are small enough to be taught that from the start without splitting
So
them.
the 7th through 12th would start on what day?
They would all start on September 8th, but they would all start AB instead of the elementary starting all in. All of them would start half day 1, half day 2,
Gotcha.
half day 3, half day 4. Then on that 5th day of school, which is the following Monday, elementary's all in. High school, junior, senior high school would continue with their model, yes. And then, the purpose for the 18th would be that we can then run 2 weeks of school, and then we can make any adjustments, changes, provide any support and training for our faculty and staff on the 18th, that they say, okay, I've been doing this 2 weeks and this is what I'm having a really hard time with. I can't manage this. How are we going to do that? Or how do I do this on the computer so that I can send that out while I'm doing this in class? And it'll give us the opportunity that we're going to train for those first 2 days. And it's not going to be your traditional superintendent's conference day. It's not going to be a lot of speeches, and it's going to be a lot of work and training and preparing. And then we're going to work for 2 weeks, and then we're going to have a day to fix whatever didn't work in those first 2 weeks, and then we go right back into our routine after that.
There also, I think, is a conference day on Election Day.
It is. The problem is if we move that conference day, then we have to have kids in on Election Day, which would make social distancing, yeah,
We never wanted kids in on
I've done that once in my life. For whatever the reason may be, they moved the conference day, and we had students and voters in on Election Day, and it's not something I would really advocate for. So we're moving the March one because we can move that one. And again, look, this is a brave new world that we're all dealing with. It's different, and I can't tell you how the first 8 days can go, but I can tell you on the 9th day, we can fix whatever was broken in the first 8 days because we're going to plan a conference day to do that. So that's about it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer whatever I can.
I have more of a, I think, comment than a question, and I know there's no answer to it. I guess that's why it's a comment. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more incurred costs because of all of this stuff. Has anybody, or is there a thought to approach the state, I know it's early, about use of reserve funds, if necessary, to pay for all of the necessary? I don't want to get to, March and say, well, gosh, we've had to spend so much money on this. We have hefty, healthy reserves in our district because we've been fiscally responsible, we like to think. So is there, or a thought that maybe business officials can approach the state and start asking now about use of reserve funds in the case of funding being low?
I think
just a thought.
We met about this today, and I think the start is to use non-renewable. For instance, we have a great deal of carryover from our grants that we could not use last year, so we're looking at our grants to try to fund some of these things because your grants are use them or lose them. You can carry over, but if the carryover is not used this year, then it's gone, and we won't get to use it. So we've started looking at trying to fund some of these things with fund lines that we have to use, and then shift around how we're spending so that it's not, grant funding is never guaranteed, and it's a great source for short-term expenses because you may not have it the next year. It's not a great source for long-term expenses because if your grant funding gets cut and you have your reading teacher in your grant, then you either lose a reading teacher or you lose something else and learn how to pay. So paying for some of this stuff that we don't expect to need year in and year out, we're trying to pay for some of it out of grants, and then I'll let Chuck explain more about the funds.
Right, just to continue. Right, we'll look at different avenues for the 1920 year to make sure how we're working on closing the books over the next couple of weeks. We did push some expenses for 1920, but we'll look at the reserves. And again, we did a couple different things with the grants, as mentioned, to allow us to really handle the 2021 year as best we can. But we'll look, again, see how we're going to stand with fund balance at the end of 1920. And all over. I mean, we're going to look at now, we have to file the CARES application by the August 15th to look at that to see how we get the reimbursement from the federal government. And again, I think there's a couple different things. I think we're in pretty good shape, like I said, because we've been planning for this for quite, a few
We didn't know
months
what we were
now,
planning.
as best we could.
Well, I would suggest maybe funding the repair reserve fund, because that's an easier fund to expend funds, and a lot of this stuff is going to be repairs, kind of, sort of. And it just might be a fund that is easier accessible
To use the
to do
repair
certain
reserve?
things that, we find out as the year goes on that's necessary to be done. It's just a thought, that's all.
I think our legislators would have already given an okay for a COVID fund.
Yeah, yeah.
To say, if you have fund balance left from this year, or, if you have anything left, you can put it in
We're not kept to that percent.
what do you mean?
The percent we're only allowed to
Oh,
keep.
yeah, either we're not kept to the 4%, or they would have allowed us to put a specific, create a specific fund for non-planned COVID expense, you know what I mean? You would think they would have been on that already.
I think I know what you mean. The problem, right, there is no really reserve for these type of COVID expenses.
Right.
Exactly.
So I'm looking to we'll see how we stand, again, back to the fund balance, because all these expenses to me are unknown, unforeseen. So that means we possibly could do budget modifications in 2021 to use fund balance
Right,
from
but we can't put
1920.
more into fund balance. That's the point. We're
Well,
still
right,
at our 4%.
that's the question, see, I'm sorry to interrupt, if we're capped at 4% usually, it might be something to see. I think we'll still be under the 4%. I think some districts are going over the 4%, knowing that we use it. I'm trying to see, I know if that's really going to be a viable option. Again, I think we'll be fine, because we are putting a little extra money in the reserves, so we'll use them for any other, unemployment expenses are going
But the
up.
reserves that we can utilize easier than the ones that are not easier to use, I think.
I fully support requesting
Excuse me?
forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If we-
Absolutely.
So,
That's kind of what we're
in
saying.
essence,
So repair is health and safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. We found that out with certain things like
Right.
trees
so
and bleachers and whatnot, so.
the unallocated fund reserve, though, we can use
What do you mean?
anytime during the year. We just want to keep it at the 4%, but we don't really, what we're saying this year is if it's above 4%, fine, it's above 4%, because we're going to need it for different things.
I think if it can be explained in an audit
Sure.
reasonably,
Yep.
like Scott just mentioned, I think that we
Plus,
just
we
have.
might get 50 people enrolling on September 3rd.
Right.
well, we may need a new classroom,
That
Yeah,
would result.
There's so
new
many,
teacher. You
there's
know
so
what I
many
mean?
unknowns that we
Yes.
don't know. I think what we're saying to you is kind of
Yeah,
like
that-
Scott said,
you know.
that
So we'll
we
look
may
at-
have to be
We'll look at
creative.
what the numbers are at the end of the year, and we'll figure out how to
That's
best
the
put
key,
the
right, to see
funds
where
that
we do stand,
feel
uh,
will be,
But
that
it's
will be
always like,
available
is
for
it
us
a-
to use.
Or am I going to jail?
Yeah,
We also have to think that, not that I'm cynical, but we all know that come next year, the state funding and the federal funding is
it's,
just probably not going
Yeah.
to happen. So I think we have to be ready for that, and we should start being ready for that
Yeah.
now. That's just my point. Thank you. That was,
Yep.
that was a lot of work that you all did to get this.
we have a lot of really good people working on it, and those ideas have come from a myriad of different people in and out of school. And as we go forward, we continue to have conversations that create more ideas, and I see that being a year-long process if this goes on for a year, or even months-long process if it goes on for months.
That's a question I have. Is there any indication on what level of cases or non-cases we would have to be? All right, let's say we it's okay to bring the kids into the school
Yeah.
with all of these, masks and 6 feet or whatever. Is there any conversation yet about what level of infection rate there has to be for us to say, okay, we can loosen up on the masks or the distancing and stuff like that?
There's been no indication. I was on What Superintendents Need to Know webinar today from Northwell Health, and it was 4 or 5 doctors from Northwell and an educator, and then there were about 90 of us listening. And a question very similar to that was asked, and one of the pediatricians said, there's been no real direction or guidance on when this will end as far as
What was
numerically or
considered the end?
quantifiably. Yeah, nothing has come
Right.
out about
Because,
that.
I think at some point, if you
Yeah.
don't allow children to be together, you're not ever going to know if it's a problem.
Yeah, and I can tell you what we've done. What we've done is we've planned for nobody's in school and everybody's in school. Like, our schedules will mesh back together, and our students will be academically exactly where the other students are that are in on the opposite days, and so on and so forth. So that whichever direction we're taking, whether it's everybody's coming back to school in the old traditional manner, maybe you're going to clean differently, and maybe you're going to do some things differently, but you're going to have 28 kids in a class. We're prepared for that, and we're scheduled for it, and we're staffed for it, and we can do that. If we're told nobody can come in, not a teacher, not anybody, we will be prepared for that. That's part of our training that we're going to do at the beginning of the year. If we're told that, teachers can come in and teach, but kids can't be here, we're prepared for that, So I can't tell you what indication they've given us about everything, but I can tell you that we have made preparations and are continuing to make preparations for whatever comes down the pike, because we were surprised last year and we weren't prepared for all
Right.
that. So this year, we've spent time getting prepared for everything. So, yep,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
The community survey results, you said you're going to talk about that, or are you going to?
I actually have it right there. So I'll send you guys the results.
Okay.
But overwhelmingly, our community indicated that they would like their kids back in school,
Okay,
and that they support that. And that's where a lot of this work came from. So,
thank you.
Yep.
That was an extensive report. Yeah, that brings us to personnel, and just bear with me, there's a lot of stuff here, so I'll do the best that I can. We all know that I don't pronounce names well. Please, no one take it personal. I'll remove the microphone so people don't have to hear it. Employees entering the district full-time permanent Bronson-born as a custodial worker, effective August 1. Employees entering the district part-time temporary, we have a custodial substitute, Darren McLoney, and then we have a whole bunch of advisors. I'm going to go through them very quickly. Senior class, I'm just going to say the last names. Gilmore, junior class Santiago, sophomore J. Santiago, sophomore class Derrigan, freshman class Imbriano, high school student council Corrado Berberich, junior high student council Carver, high school yearbook Gosnell, junior high yearbook Governell, founding voices Rooney, Interact Gilmore Salmaggi, musical drama club Elwood Rooney Bauman, SAD J. Santiago, Quiz Bowl Long Island Challenge I. Santiago, High School National Honor Society, J. Stahl, Select Choir, Bauman, Jazz Band Himmelman, Sentinel Stahl, First Robotics Lego, Shade Gammon, Safer Myers, Environmental Club Ridge, Broadcast Media Club Wesnoski, Wellness Club Salmaggi, School Ambassador Club Elwood Johnson, Film Club Wesnoski. Safety Committee is Jennifer Moley, Peter Salerno, and Brian Tobin. ESL Advocate is John Myers, Coordinator for Outside Musical Events, Renee Saprina, Arts and Education Coordinator, Renee Saprina. Web Assistant, Karen Kowalski. Elementary Yearbook, Pam Palmer. Elementary Student Council is shared between Lori Cariello and Beth Weinberger. Math Coordinator, Sam Wertheim. Elementary Talent Show, Karen Kukowski and Leah Leonard. STEAM Fair, Deb Kimmelman and Ken Mayer. Elementary Assessment Coordinator, Marlene Buffkins. Elementary Accommodations Coordinator, Marlene Buffkins. Elementary New York State Coordinator, Marlene Buffkins. Substitute Coordinator for the elementaries, Teresa Pressler. Elementary Play Club, Julie Fogarty, Renata Coppola. High School and Middle School Assessments Coordinator, Heather Gehring and Eric Keel. High School and Middle School Accommodations Coordinator, Christine Imbriano. High School and Middle School New York State Coordinator, Donna Masquara. Middle School Lead Teacher, Alyssa Basso. SSD Coordinator, Francesca Reardon. SAT Coordinator, Francesca Reardon. Business Advisory Coordinator Francesca Reardon, Driver Education Advisor Ian Carnival, PM Supervision Heather Gearing, After School Detention Saturday also Christine Imbriano. And I want to point out that these are, in fact, if all of this stuff takes place. We're appointing them, but we don't know what's going to happen.
But so in other words, if they're not able to perform in these functions, there's going to be,
That's correct.
Any questions or comments, except about my pronunciation of names? Is there a motion to accept the superintendent's personnel recommendations?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, that was a lot of pages. Oh, Policy Committee report.
Nothing at this time.
Building Committee report.
Nothing at this time.
New business. I think we just went over all the new business to be had, right? Second hearing of visitors. At this time, we will entertain comments and questions about agenda items and any school matters in general. Does anyone care to address the board at this time? Oh, here she comes. Hi, Angela.
Angela Tondo, Southold, parent. I just have two questions about the presentation. You talked about lunch being in different places. Does that mean students from 10 through 12 will not be allowed out for lunch, like to go wherever it is they go when they go out?
Lunch in the building will be in different places.
Okay, but the students will
We
still
plan
be...
on keeping our practices in place that we've
Okay.
had for students to go out. We are going to speak to them about making good choices when they're out and trying to stay in line with, kind of similar to what we do every year.
Right.
But we're not closing our campus at this time.
All right, well, that's
Will
good.
they have to be screened when they come back in from lunch period?
Yeah, if they leave
Keep in mind.
and come back, they'll have to have the temperature taken. The screening have they been in a different state or?
No,
anything,
I
that
meant-
won't have to be done again.
Right,
But
right.
they'll have to, we will have people at the doors that will be checking anybody that enters our building during the day,
right,
Regardless.
because you don't know if they've already been screened prior
Right,
to
right.
that.
Okay.
Got it.
so they will.
And as you were talking about with clubs, now, any club, that's going to be contingent on, one, if we're allowed in school, but if we are in a hybrid mode, will they still be able to do?
We don't know yet.
We don't know, yeah.
We don't know
That's
We're
what I
going to
figured.
try to figure out ways to provide club opportunities, but it may be that some kids are coming up here on a day when they're not here. It may, we can't, because we don't know what kids would be in what clubs, we can't schedule them that way.
Right.
And we've also found, quite honestly, we've tried multiple different scheduling combinations to try some different and unique things. And some work and some don't, because they put us out of whack with our numbers in a classroom.
Right, because if you do the alphabet, some you have,
Yeah. Both our elementary and secondary administrators are working hard
sure.
to try to provide as many opportunities as they can for all of our kids, so.
Okay, so now the whole social distancing thing. If students are not social distancing, are they going, what kind of trouble, I guess they need to know what the consequences are for not behaving. They're going to walk in the classroom and they're going to see, a teacher, and they're going to instinctively want to hug someone they didn't get to say goodbye to.
It's not going to be a menu style, hey,
Right.
you're within 6 feet, you're getting a demerit. It's not going to really, it's going to be more of an educational process at the beginning.
Okay,
They're laughing back there because they know I went to Catholic school because I said you get a demerit.
Yes.
Because they're the only ones that give demerits anymore.
Yes.
But, it's going to be a learning process at the beginning.
Okay.
You see somebody you haven't seen in a while, you go to hug them. I had this with my 82-year-old father when he came out for a celebration of my daughter's graduation. And, it was made clear that he wasn't going to be hugging everybody because we've worked for 4 months to keep him healthy.
Right.
But my first instinct was to hug him, and his first instinct was to, I didn't get in trouble for it,
Right.
but we had to work towards making sure we don't do those things. And that will be the process for us. Now, if you purposely do something, you'll be held accountable for it, just like you would for any other action in school.
because it is about keeping the teachers safe, because the kids are all hanging out
Yeah.
together anyway. It
Not
is.
all of them.
But not all of them, a lot, not all of them,
It's
but.
about keeping
yeah.
everybody safe.
It's keep everybody safe. It is about keeping the kids, but it is, the kids, especially, not even the little ones, because the little ones are going to learn.
Yeah.
It's teaching the older ones to not, run up and hug Audrey and,
And our expectations are going to be very clear for them. and
Yeah, well, that's
gonna-
it, as long
It's going
as
to be
they're
part of
clear.
the beginning of the school year.
Yeah. Okay,
Will there be tolerance of the fact that they're human? Yes.
Okay.
And will there be tolerance of the fact that this is a brand-new set of expectations for
Everybody.
everybody? and things that would never have been looked at as problematic maybe now. So, we will absolutely have an understanding of that, but we will provide expectations for our students, and then, we will interact with them in a way that's positive and productive and helps them achieve those expectations.
Thank you, and welcome to Southold.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Angela. Anybody else care to address the board? Hi, Erin. Just state your name and kind of thing, please.
Erin Kalin, Southold. I have to apologize. I missed the beginning, so you may have already covered this. Welcome, by the way. Congratulations. When the kids are home, when the students are on the hybrid model and the older kids are home or the younger kids, or however it works, will they be live streaming a class?
If no one is in school,
Okay.
we will be live streaming classes.
Okay.
If part is in and part is out, what we will do is we're trying to come up with a model where, with only 11 kids in the class, I may deliver more instruction than I would have in a normal lesson, and then give you follow-up work to go along with that added instruction the next day, sort of like a flipped classroom model. So I'll be giving you the mini lesson today. You're going to go home and do the independent work. When you come back the next day, I'm going to follow up with questions and answers about what you did. But when our teachers are teaching 5 classes here, they're not going to be able to provide live instruction at home because they're going to be in classrooms teaching.
Okay. I think my question was more if in the live classroom that they're teaching, would there be a camera so kids at home could, no, okay. Okay. And then in reference to, so that's 7 through 12, correct?
Right now, it's 7 through 12. We're still trying to work through getting 7 and 8 in. Ideally, I'd like it to be 9 through 12, but we have not worked out the logistics of doing that yet. And if we do work out the logistics, it's going to mean a lot of time for certain kids that would have been on a B day at home, being in study halls for most of their day, or sitting in here for a lot of their day, doing that work without direct instruction. And I would want to reach out to all of our families and see if that's something that they believe their children can do and would be interested in. Because there's a lot of parents that have said to me, not necessarily Southold parents, if you bring my kid in and he's going to sit there in a study hall all day and just do work, I'd rather him not be there.
And why would they be in a study hall? Why would they be in?
Because we can only have a certain number of students in a classroom, and we only have a certain number of classrooms. Like in a typical period, besides when we're having lunches or music, we only have 3 open classrooms in the whole building.
Is that
So-
also in the elementary?
No, the elementary.
No, our elementary is smaller and we have more spaces.
So the elementary is going to look more like a regular school year?
With the exception of, if I can fit 17 children into my class and there's 24, then throughout the day, 7 students will be rotated in and out throughout the day. Not the same 7 every day like we're doing here at the high school, because our high school scheduling is very, very different and more intricate. Whereas, we can rotate a number of kids out of class in an elementary school throughout the day. Maybe it's an hour and a half for these 7 and the next 7 and the next 7, and the teacher can come in and do the mini lesson while whoever supervises the class, when they're doing their independent work off the mini lesson she did before, we can flip-flop back and forth. So we have the ability to do things like that in the elementary school that we can't do here.
Right.
Just moving 450 kids around the building is problematic under the guidelines the state has in place.
I have one in each school, so I have a lot
Yes.
of questions.
Yep, I hope yeah. And as more information comes out and you have questions, just reach out. I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, all right. And what about, and you may have said this in the beginning, and I apologize, I was a little late. Will there be music? Will there be gym? Will there be band?
In some way, shape, and form, yes. We can't put 60 kids in a room and have a band because the state
Can
says...
you put a trumpet section in a room?
It depends on how many kids. The
Okay.
state says if you're blowing in a trumpet, 12 feet of space per child.
Okay.
So that means 144 square feet per child, which means in a room like this, I could probably do about 30 kids. Maybe even less, maybe even 20 kids. We'd have to space it out. In a typical music room, what we're looking at doing is trying to pull kids in smaller groups throughout the day, because we can't have music the way music used to look. But we're committed to trying to have music.
And what about changing classes in the hallways?
We're going, on the elementary levels, we're going to minimize it as much as possible. But again, it's a really
Right, it's
easier
easier to
setting
do
to do it. Up here, we're going to try to stagger them a little bit. We're going to try to minimize them, possibly switch teachers' rooms. But because of our course offerings, we don't have the same 24 kids that have the same 8 classes throughout the day. So there's going to have to be movement around. But we're going to try to minimize it and control it as much as we possibly can. We're not capable of keeping all of our secondary kids in one room for the whole day and rotate the teacher, because the 20 kids that start in room A might take 20 different classes during the day when you add up all the course selections that they have. So we can't manage it. Certain kids will have to leave and come and go, and so
Will the kids be allowed to use their lockers?
we're not looking at using lockers at this time, but we're looking at the feasibility of doing it, but lockers are proving to be problematic, just in how close they are together, and real tough to space lockers that are right
Sure.
up against each other.
What about those gigantic backpacks that they're all carrying because they're not using their locker? Like, how is that going to be an issue with the kids sanitizing? Are they going to have to do
We
some-
don't know a lot of the
Right.
answers
So
to
this is all
time.
state guidance then that you're waiting on, I guess?
Well, we're going to come up with plans for what we're going to do. How we actually manage it, that's what that second conference day is. Like,
Okay.
if someone comes in and says, hey, look, we got to look at what we do with a kid carrying 5 textbooks around because he's going to hurt somebody with that backpack, then we have to figure out whether we use 5 textbooks, it's a fluid learning process. Kids' lockers are more problematic than backpacks when it comes to the guidelines the state gives us. So we understand that backpacks are not an ideal solution, and we may ask that, we have kids leave textbooks at home and utilize different,
That's
so
or something.
things are going to look very different than they did in the past.
Sure.
Flexibility of all of our adults and children is going to be paramount, and we're going to continue to work to provide the best education we can. Some of these answers will come from the state. Some we've decided, but we don't know if they're going to fully work.
Right.
And we're open to changing them if they don't. So,
Okay, thank you. I
you're very
appreciate
welcome.
Well, I think it's also, once we find out next week what we're allowed to do,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Are we allowed to even be in school? I think then you can
Yes.
get closer to starting to hone
We're not,
out
if
the
we're not here, we
details.
don't really need to worry about the backpacks as much.
Right, because we just don't know
Yeah.
yet if we're going to be allowed in school at all yet. So I think once we do that, once we get that, then it's easier to say, okay, this is the path we're now going to really focus on going down.
Communication, flexibility, and patience, that's what everybody's going to have to
CFP.
get really, really good at.
Yeah.
Adults and children.
FP.
You like that, huh?
I do. Communication.
Communication. What was it again?
Flexibility and
Flexibility and patience. And the children are probably much better, all 3 of those.
They tend to be better than adults,
Okay, that brings us to our commentary. Scott?
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Morrow. Pretty strange for a first board meeting, but I thank you for that. And thank everybody and the faculty, staff, and just hoping we get a good school year out of it.
Well, let's see, this community has educated students for 114, 15 years, right? So we've gotten through 2 world wars, we've gotten through Korea, we've gotten through Vietnam, we've gotten through the Great Depression, and we're going to get through this. There's a lot of good people in this community, there's a lot of good people who work at the school, and this stinks, and I feel bad for teachers, because I know how much teachers love their students. It's such a big part of their life, and I feel bad for the students, but good will come out of this. We're all going to be better and stronger, we're going to be okay. It's just frustrating that we can't see the end, but it will eventually come, and we will be okay.
Well said. Judy?
I couldn't say it better myself from both of those 2 over there, so. Welcome, thank you very, very much, and everybody, all the work they've done, and I echo what John says. We'll get through it, and we'll get through it together.
I echo all those thoughts. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was very informative. As I said, I would just remind everybody, communication, flexibility, we're all in this together. There's no finger pointing, there's no blame, it's just we all just have to be on the same team to to have a dumb sports analogy. And like John said, we'll be okay. John also says we're in a very special place, and I think in times like this, we'll really see how special it is. Okay, that being said, I need a motion to adjourn to a quick exec session, and Chuck, can you join us? So we can talk about what,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.